Hey everybody, it's Emily from Life Sew Savory, and today we're going to be sewing a beautiful dress like this. I have my model today showing off one of the versions, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and do my shares here, and then we'll talk about the dress we're going to make and what we're doing. So just stand here for a few minutes, okay? I hope you are all doing well today. Let me know what you're up to and what's going on. All right. So we'll just do a few shares here. Hi, Mary. Yes, she is pretty cute, isn't she? So like I mentioned, we're going to be sewing this dress today. Rose is modeling one version, and if you've been following along, you kind of know that one of my summer projects is to sew dresses for all of the nephews. Well, not dresses, but sew clothes for all of the nephews and nieces on my side of the family, and that's something I try to do each summer. So today, this summer's some of the girls' pattern is this one that Rose is wearing here. So yes, so I have this one made. Actually, I've got two done yesterday. And because I need to make 12 outfits, I've kind of, I'm trucking along here trying to get several done. So I'm going to sew one of these from start to finish today, and hopefully you can follow along and see what we're doing. So this is the free Galena Dress by Little Lizard King. And this is not sharing. And Rose is modeling it for you today. And can you give us a twirl? Well, slowly because you're on the stool. So we're going to be sewing up one of these. So this is not my free pattern, but I have linked to a blog post on my site where I talked about this free pattern. So you can go ahead and click through the link in the description of this post to get more information about it. And we're making it in fun 4th of July fabric. And if you saw my live with Angela last week on Friday on the Brother Sews page, you saw that I was working on the neck bands for a couple of these posts, or a couple of these patterns. No, not quite yet. So no flashing. Oh yeah, Rose, you got to keep your dress down. So yeah, so I compared a binding and a band on last week's sewing tutorial on the Brother Sews page. So you can check that out on that Facebook page if you want that tutorial. And then this is, we're gonna make one from start to finish today. So hopefully that works out. And I'm just trying to do a couple of shares here, but my computer is being weird, or my internet's been glitchy lately. So I'll just do a couple more here, and then we'll talk one more time about this, and then she can go because she's not wanting to be here. So it's summer, as you can tell. My kids are home, so hopefully we can incorporate them a little bit more into some of the live shows and modeling some of the things that we're making, and it's fun to be able to see things live. So while we're waiting for this, the fabrics that I used are all from Raspberry Creek Fabric, and this is one in double brush poly. This rocket pattern is another one in double brush poly, and this stars with little red bursts is another one in double brush poly. So those were the 3 double brush poly, and then I had 2 French terry, this tie-dye and a stripe that I'm making boys shorts out of. So what is going on? It's like says posting and it's forever and ever and ever. So let's try something different. So anyway, that is what we're going to be making today, and I just might not be able to do any shares because it's being weird, but hopefully you're all able to see this, and if you would want to go ahead and share this to any sewing groups that you're in or your own timeline, that'd be awesome. If not, I'll try to do it later because it is seemingly being weird right now. So I don't know what's going on. Hey, come back here. Okay, so one more look at this and then I will let her go. This is, again, the Galena dress from Little Lizard King, and I wrote about it in the post that is linked in the description of this video, so you can go there and check it out. And it's free patterns for both kids, girls, and women, so it's fun if you want to make coordinating for all sizes. So give us one last twirl. It just has an easy waist, an A-line skirt, and it has several sleeve options. This one that I'm going to show you how to do today is just a raw edge gathered with elastic. So super cute. And yes, you may go. Thank you. Okay. Hey, put that back in my bedroom, please. Or are you going to keep it on?
I'm going to keep it on.
Okay. So she's off. Not super excited about sticking around to do this forever. So let me see if I can get a couple more things here. This is just so strange. And we'll get started. So anyway, yes, so cute dress, cute model. I am making, like I said, so 12 total. There are 3 boys that will get shorts, and there are my oldest niece, who's 14, wants more of like a swing tee dress. So I actually modified the largest size of the girls' swing tee. It goes up to a size 16, and I was able to make that she fit in the size range as a 14-year-old, just about for the size 16. And so we lengthened it to be a dress. So that was super exciting and super easy and very cute. I'm almost done here. And then the baby is getting my free baby romper pattern, and everyone else is getting the Galena. So I have the most of those to sew. And because everyone's measurements are slightly different, I have the pieces all cut out, and they are bagged, ready to go here. So I sewed two already, and looks like I have 5 more to go. So 7 Galenas, I think. Yes, my family does appreciate it, and I love seeing, the girls continue to wear the dresses all summer long. Now I've a little bit limited it this year because of the fabric that I'm using is very 4th of July, but hopefully people will just wear them the rest of the summer. So that's my own fault, but I just could not pass up this adorable fabric. So we're going to be sewing this dress from start to finish. I do have all the pieces cut out. We have a neck band, we have 2 sleeves, we have a front and a back, and then 2 skirt pieces. And like I mentioned, I modified each of the dresses to fit the girls' sizing, both width and length. So they're all just a little bit different because of tweaking the height or the width for that particular girl. So hopefully these fit, even though I've made them entirely with measurements and not having the girls here, but we will see. Okay, so today we're going to be using a little bit of everything. So I'll get the machines turned on. And I'm going to start by adding the elastic to the bottom of the arm. And the pattern does give an elastic width to cut, but I don't like having a cut elastic when I'm stretching it because I like a nice long tail. So the way that I sewed the ones yesterday is I simply pulled and stretched the elastic while I was sewing, and that's the width I went with. So I didn't use the measurements, but if you want it to be exact, definitely go ahead and use the measurements provided on the pattern. So we're going to begin sewing, and before I start stretching the elastic, I like to get it anchored in nicely, and I'm sewing about 1 inch up from the bottom edge of the sleeve. The top edge of the sleeve will be gathered to get that cute little puff sleeve that you saw on Rose. So I'm just hitting my zigzag button and going with a standard zigzag to sew this elastic on. And I'm going to sew far enough that I can grab the back of this. So it's about 1 inch before it comes out the back where I can see it. And then from there, I'm going to pull the elastic with my right hand. I know it's kind of hard to see, but pull as far as I can and then sew that elastic in place while I'm pulling to really give that cute gathered look. And this sleeve has a cuff option, a hemmed option, this raw elastic option. I'm trying to think what else. It also has a long sleeve version, which I made for Rose in the winter, and super cute. So you know I love free patterns, even if they're not mine, and so I'm happy to, if you haven't heard about this one, I hope you'll take a chance and check it out, because like I said again, there's a sewing machine question. I'll answer that in just a minute. You know, women's extra, extra large or 4XL, or I'm not exactly sure the sizing of the women's. Like I said, again, this isn't my pattern, but it's one that I've used and loved, and I'm using it for the cousin clothes this summer. So I want to tell you about it. So sewing machine and serger information. So here's my serger, and that's a Simplicity 3734 from Brother. And then this is the Essence 5200. It's a combo sewing and embroidery machine. I just love it because for embroidery, the hoop is an 8x12. So I can really embroider on large surfaces. And then it also is a great sewing machine when I don't want to use it as an embroidery machine. You may notice that I didn't pin this elastic or mark on the fabric, and that's because this fabric is striped, so I can just use the stripes already on the fabric to make it easy for me to sew. So I sewed down the middle of this red and white stripe, and I was able to use that as a reference. So otherwise I'd mark with a marker or something so I can stretch and sew nicely along that line. So you know, make sure that you are marking that. Okay, so now we're gonna change, still stay on our sewing machine. I'm gonna change it to the longest stitch length, which is 5 millimeters. And I'm going to gather the top cap of this sleeve. Again, I'm using the cutout or the natural print on this pattern to show me where to start and stop. And I'm gathering from approximately the top of this red to the top of this red so that the cap of this can be nice and gathered, okay? So there are also, of course, pattern markings on the pattern, but I was mass cutting out 8 of these and didn't make all the pattern markings. So if I was just making one, I definitely probably would have been more intentional, but I knew I was gonna be mass assembling these dresses, and so I'm taking a few shortcuts. All right, so I've run a gathering stitch along the top of that, and I'll show you in a minute how we gather it up. And then I am sewing pretty close to the edge, maybe a 1/4 inch from the edge, because I'm hoping that these gathering stitches will be caught in that shoulder seam, and then I won't have to pick them out, but sometimes I still do. And then I like to make sure I don't use the automatic needle cutter when I'm making a gathering stitch because I want those long tails. Okay, so now I can find the bobbin thread and pull and gather this up a little bit. I'm going to have to do it more obviously when I have it by the fabric, but this can get me a little bit started. Okay, so you can see gathering that cute little puff sleeve. And we'll come back to this when we're ready to put the sleeves in, but I've just gathered that top sleeve cap. And again, I like to do it by pulling the bobbin thread. And usually I pull a little bit from both directions. And then I'll go back and adjust these once we have the sleeves done. Okay, so there is the sleeve ready to be added to the rest of the outfit, but now it's time to move that elastic. I just was keeping it over here because I knew I was going to be sewing many of these. All right, let me see, can I pull this forward so that you can see it? I think you can see the stitch bed. All right, so we're going to take the back of the dress and the front of the dress, and we're gonna sew it together at one of the shoulder seams. I was pretty intentional when cutting out this fabric to make sure that hopefully the stripes on the sides aligned. The other fabrics weren't as stripy, and so I was able to just more get away with cutting them out and having the design be random. But this one is, as you saw on Rose, I was intentional about like making this where the stripes went on the skirt and on the side seam of the dress that she was wearing. So, okay, so I'm going to open this up, this neckline. Now this dress does call for a neck binding where you sew it and then you fold it over and then you top stitch it again. And if you saw my live on Friday, and you can go back to the Brother Sews Facebook page over at Brother Sews and see my post that I did with Angela Wolf on Friday comparing a neck binding and a neck band. It was kind of a disaster of a show, and if it could go wrong, it did go wrong, including my serger not working, running out of thread on my cover stitch, having the wrong needle on my sewing machine, the doorbell being rung twice. I mean, it was just one of those times where it was really hard to get through, but we did, and we laughed a lot. So you can go check that out. But the neck binding takes a little bit longer. And again, in the mass production of these dresses, I am switching the neck bindings to neck bands. And neck bands is where you simply take the neck edge, fold it in half so that the right sides are out. And you can see here, I've got either a red side or a blue side. I think I'm gonna have the blue side out. So I will place that on my neck edge, and I'm just keeping the same width as the binding, which was 1.75 inches. So you can do either one, and then I'm gonna stretch it as I sew. So the seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch, and that is what was directed on the pattern. But like I said, I'm changing up the pattern by changing it from a binding to a band. Now, if you wanna learn how to make neck bands, this free pattern includes an excellent tutorial on how to do that, and the one Rose was modeling did have a neck binding, not a neck band, but I am switching it over to a band here. Again, because I'm hoping to sew several of these even yet today. We're not going to get together until the end of this month, but you know, I've got other things to do, so when I have some time, I'm trying to truck along on these outfits. So I was very pleased with kind of how far I got yesterday, and hopefully we can make some good progress again today. So you can see that I did not measure, and I'm not measuring, I'm just kind of stretching these as I sew, and that's because I've sewed a lot of neck bands, and so I can just, ooh, that looks pretty with the stars, stretch and sew it as I go, but you would want to follow the pattern instructions if you were not familiar with this. So the serger seam allowance, there are little ticks here on my serger right here, there's little notches, and you line up the fabric with that and sew, and that gives you the seam allowance. So that's how you show a seam allowance on a serger. Okay, we are now going to top stitch on the cover stitch. This is, I think, well, maybe the hem. No, I'm not even hemming it. This is really the only thing we're cover stitching on this outfit, so I'll show you, but I'm going to, here's the binding, here's the shirt. We're folding the seam allowance towards the shirt, and we're gonna stitch right on that to lay it down flat and sew that together. So, okay, Mary, so I've been having serger trouble, and I did end up changing all my thread from last week, and I don't know if that's the answer, but it's working better now. Of course, I rethreaded the whole thing to make sure it was, you know, not threaded incorrectly. But who knows what was messing up? Sorry, I'm looking for. But I ended up putting on serger needles, so not knit needles, and it's working. So I don't know what the right answer is. Yes, so the regular is 1/4 of an inch, but you can make it wider. So who was asking about the serger needles? Debbie. So I just am using serger needles, and they say serger needles on them. I don't know. Oh, overlock serger needles. So this is what I'm using on the serger. I may go back and again try the knit needles, because it really is the best for, you know, poking through and not leaving holes and making sure that you're sewing correctly on the knit fabric. But I was just having so many issues with it that I wanted to eliminate and see what the problem was. Now on this machine, I do have stretch needles, knit needles. And you know, the difference with needles and sewing different fabrics is sometimes the wrong needle can leave weird holes in your fabric, so you definitely don't want that. Sometimes the wrong needle can cause the thread to break and pop. Sometimes the wrong needle will cause your machine to skip stitches. So any of those problems can actually be using the incorrect needle on your machine. So that's, if I'm having trouble sewing, the needles are always something I check, as well as the threading and the actual thread that I'm using. And you know, there can be any number of problems, but that is something that I do check out when I'm sewing if I'm having issues. So, okay, so here is that beautiful cover stitch. It's a nice stretchy stitch on the back of there. And then you can see on this side, it's that looper right there. Hey, Rose, that's really loud. We can hear it. Rosie, what? Turn your show down. Okay. The joys of having everyone home while I'm trying to sew. Okay, so now we've got our shirt to this point, and the next thing we're going to do is sew up this other shoulder seam. You know that I always like to sew my bands on while my shoulder seam is still open. Another shortcut, but that one I take every time, not only when I'm mass producing. All right, so we will now, so there's the shoulder seam, and I'm now going to finish this raw serger seam here. So you can't just cut that, it will fray away. So I'm taking my big old darning needle and pushing it through those stitches, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the tail through about 1 inch of the stitches and cut it off, and that will secure my seam, my shoulder seam there. All right, so now we are ready to put in those sleeves that we prepared earlier. So you can see down here, So I'm going to go ahead and open up, and there's a front and a back, and the sleeve also has a front and a back, which I didn't mark, but I can tell. So this sleeve has less fabric here and more fabric, I think. Well, now I already gathered it, so it's a little bit hard to tell. Let me ungather it. So when I fold it in half, which side has? Okay, so the one that has more goes on the back. So this is the sleeve for this one. Okay, so with the gathered sleeve caps, that puff sleeve up there, I'm going to you're going to pin or clip the parts of the sleeve that don't have the gathering, and then we'll adjust that gathered part to fit in there. So I'm putting sort of 3 clips up on that side, and then I'm going to go from the other side 3 clips up, and then we'll adjust our gathers so that the rest of it fits in. But I like to kind of get that part started, and then I can see here what's left, right? Here's my dress, here's the sleeve, and how much more or less do I need to gather it so that it fits. And then we will clip that in. I like using my clips for sleeves here. Okay, and then once we've got that on, then I'll turn it and go to the other sleeve. And I kind of ungathered this one, so I'm going to regather it a little bit to get it started. Okay, and then a few more clips here. So again, starting from matching each side, and then I'm working up to where the gathering begins, and then I'll just adjust that gathering to fit. I will put a disclaimer in here that this is not necessarily following the tutorial directions for this free pattern. So go download this free pattern and get the actual directions so that I don't mess you up. So this is the way I'm sewing this dress, but this is not the way the designer necessarily put the tutorial together. So that's my disclaimer on this pattern. That is not mine, but that I'm using and promoting for you to go get because it's a great free pattern. Okay, so let's sew the sleeves on. We're using the same 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'm sewing up and starting and stopping, kind of making sure that those opposite curves are flowing together. And then we get to the gathered part, and we want to make sure that our gathers are neat and even, and I'm sewing over, you know, the gathers, and then as well as the shirt underneath. I like sewing where I can see the gathers because that helps me try to keep them flat and not tucked inside each other, but you can sew on either side of the fabric. You can sew with the shirt facing you or with the gathers facing you. It's really your preference. Oh, but I missed a tiny bit right there. All right, so now we flip this open, and I like to check up here where we put those gathering stitches to see if you can see the gathering stitches. And I used a dark thread, so it's looking pretty good on this one. Clip any threads, and if you do see that gathering stitch there, you're gonna wanna get a seam ripper and just pick those out. But you can see how this adorable sleeve is coming together, and I love this fabric for summer. So there's one. Let's go ahead and sew the other sleeve in place. And I think this elastic edge sleeve is another really cute and easy sleeve finish. There are just so many ways you can finish your sleeves in addition to your normal hem. So this one is, I think, a cute summery look. And the reason I picked it was because it was the easiest sleeve finish. And having to make a bunch of them, I didn't want to be doing one of the futzier ones. So one of the options that I've made before is you gather the top like I just did, and then you actually run a gathering stitch on the bottom as well. And then you put a band along there. So it's a cute little cuff with gathers on it. So that one is fun too, but I didn't want to have to worry about that. So, okay, here I can see just a couple of the stitches. So I'm going to grab my seam ripper and cut that and then pull out that gathering thread. Okay? So that will keep those threads from being seen, and just, yeah, clip all the threads and go back later and reclip the threads. So making the band instead of the binding like this, it really is a bit of a higher neckline, okay? But still cute. So, and like I said, this free pattern also comes for adults. So if you're thinking of making it for yourself, you totally should. I made one for me and I love it. And I think it comes in quite a wide size range, up to several extra larges. So I don't want to say it because I'm not quite sure. But check out my post about it and then head over and check out the actual free pattern and check it out, because it is a beautiful one for all sizes. And it's very flattering too. You'll see the pictures in women of all sizes and girls of all sizes. And I wouldn't think with the waistline being the way it is that it would be so flattering, but it really is a beautiful flattering dress on everybody. I haven't seen one that I didn't love. Okay, so I am sewing the side seams from the raw edge of the seam down to the bottom, because that's where we'll be joining the skirt. And we'll have to finish that raw, our serger seam on that raw sleeve here, because we're not enclosing it in another seam. I'm also making sure that I get in my seam both of those ends of the elastic that we sewed on the sleeve, because that will make sure that it keeps that gathering all in place there as well. All right, so I'm going to grab my same darning needle and go back through these stitches here on this raw end of the sleeve. So if you're hemming the sleeve after you've sewed the side seam, you don't need to do that, because then that serger seam will be caught in the hem. But like this, where anytime it's left raw, you do need to make sure that you finish it by either folding it over. You can fold this over and stitch on your machine, or I like the pull through method. So if you've watched before, you know that I have this trusty darning needle. And if I'm ever asked what one of my favorite sewing tools is, I say this needle, because I've tried to replace it and I just can't find one that I love as much. So it is the perfect amount of sharp and dull and not too thick, but not too thin. And it's my favorite. So I tried to, I got this other one, but it's just so huge. Like the eye, look at how giant that is. So compared to this one, you know, it's way bigger. This one's way bigger, trying to put through my fabric. So I'll stay with my favorite for now. Okay, so now we're gonna grab the skirt. It's simply cut in 2 pieces on the fold. The top is slightly curved to go around the edge of the skirt. It flares out at the bottom, and you can see I just cut these with the stripe going straight down. I did not try to match the side seams because it's cut at an angle, so those stripes will not match, but it's pretty with the stripes going down, and then they're going the opposite direction on the top. So we're going to match the side seams and sew from the top to the bottom on these side seams. And then of course you can hem this dress. I am choosing not to. Sewing 8, keeping it moving. But honestly, with knit fabric, I love the look of an unfinished light bottom. I think it's airy, it twirls well. But if you did want to hem it, you either want to do a very narrow hem or a rolled hem or something that would keep that light twirly effect going. I made one of these out of a French terry in the winter for Rose, and I did do a small narrow hem on it. Again, leaving myself a tail so I can finish that through. If you are hemming, you do want to make sure that your cut on the bottom was very smooth and clean with no jagged scissor or blade edges, right? We want this to be a nice clean cut since we're not going to hem it. So that's what I was just doing right there, was trimming a little jagged edge that I saw. Okay, so now we'll start on the other side at the top. And I'm going to sew this down. Again, you can find this free pattern information by going to the post that I wrote about it on my website. The post that I've linked for you is a collection of adult and children's matching patterns. And this was one that I made, actually the one that I took photos of Rose and I, to really highlight adult and children matching. So this pattern comes in both kids and adult sizes and is super cute. So that's always fun. All right, so since I'm not hemming the bottom of this skirt, I'm going to once again finish my serger edges up through the side seam. You can hem this. Oh my goodness. Wait a second. Look it. I just noticed this is what mass cutting gets you. So we'll put this in the back because I'm going to have to add a little piece here. I must have, when I folded the pattern piece over, got a little bad piece in it. Okay, so glad I noticed it now and not when we're trying to take pictures of 12 grandkids all together. I have time to fix it, and I do have extra of all of these fabrics. And if you like what you're seeing here, come back every Wednesday. We will be sewing at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I like to try and do a project from start to finish, just to kind of show you how things go together. All right, so now we're gonna take that top edge. I think I'm glad that my mistake is not on the top edge. And I'm gonna turn the dress top right side out. And if you have a preference with the front or the back of the skirt based on your fabric direction, you will want to go ahead and make sure the fronts are together, but I don't really have, it's the same pattern piece, so I'm not really worrying about it. So I'm going to match the side seams. Thank you, Patty. Match the side seams to begin with, and then ease the other sides to fit, but it really should go together quite easily. You don't have to stretch. It shouldn't stretch too much. The other thing, if you're worried about the shape of the waist, is you can add clear elastic into the waist seam when you're sewing it. But I didn't on the ones I made the other day, and I had Rose try it on and it looked just fine without, so I'm going to leave this one out as well. Again, skipping steps or just simplifying where I can so that I can sew more of these in a shorter amount of time. And I cannot wait to show you guys the finished results of all the sewing with all the nieces and nephews together after we've been together at the 4th. So if you want to see the other outfits that I've made for all the cousins, you can go to lifesewsavory.com and search like cousin clothes or coordinating outfits. Either one of those searches will bring up the other outfits that I've made in the past. So it's always so fun to see, and it's fun to see them as they grow. And then I like to just, you know, go back and reflect on those posts each year to see how they're doing. And actually the first year I did it is quite hilarious. It was when I was just getting back into sewing after sewing as a kid and then not sewing as an adult. And one of the outfits I made, the kid couldn't even fit in it. So we had to cut it up the back and only take pictures from the front. And then you couldn't see that the back of this little romper was cut open so that my poor nephew could wear it. So I feel like I've come a long way since then. And it's fun for me to see that progress, as well to see how much the kids have really grown every year. So always fun. So I'm trying not to stretch this waist because I really want it to lay like Rose's did, which was just flat and nice. And I don't want the waist to seem stretched out. So I'm trying to be pretty careful when I'm sewing that. Okay, so let's take a look at this finished dress. I probably should have made sure that little mistake in the skirt was on the back, and I think it is. So that's fortunate for me. All right, so here is the dress in a size 8, lengthened a little bit to a 10 for my tall niece. But I just think the sleeves are so cute with the elastic. It's not wanting to come out, but it is very cute. Okay, with like the ruffled edge and the elastic, and there's the neck, and then the fabric going 2 different ways for a cute 4th of July summer dress. So again, this free pattern, you can find all the details for both the women and the children's version by clicking the link in the description of this video and then scrolling down to where you find the Galena by Little Lizard King. This is not my pattern. I don't want to take credit for it. It's by another designer, but they also are sharing it free, so I'm passing that information on to you. And this 4th of July fabric all came from Raspberry Creek Fabric. Again, no affiliation with them, but I buy a ton of their fabric and I love it. And they release fun seasonal fabric each sort of quarter or holiday. So this fabric all came from them. So that's today's sewing tutorial. I hope you will come back next week where we'll sew something equally fun. I had a request today for my tote bag pattern to be sewn up live. So we will see if I sew that next week or another time. But I'm so glad you joined me today, and I can't wait to be back with you next week. Have a great week until then, and enjoy summer, or if it's winter where you are, enjoy your week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.